Hi, I'm Dan Hoffman. Welcome to Farm Connections. On today's show, we talk about the public perception of agriculture. We also check out the Stoppel farm. An Olmsted County farm illustrates what life was like here in the 1850s. Thiesse talks about the volatility that can follow USDA report releases. And Tracy Fink visits with Regnier about his career goals. Stay with us. Farm Connections is next.
Welcome to Farm Connections with your host, Dan Hoffman.
Brought to you in part by Absolute Energy, a locally owned facility producing 115 million gallons of ethanol every year, proudly supporting local economies in Iowa and Minnesota. Absolute Energy, adding value to the neighborhood.
This year at FarmFest, I had the chance to participate in a panel discussion about how well the agricultural community communicates. The perceptions of those not familiar with farms is often quite different than reality. Here's an abbreviated look at the conversation.
When I arrived in Chicago 55 years ago, and I'd talk agriculture with people at church or at meetings in the city and the suburbs, I started to help convince them that farmers and ranchers are important. I said, they get up earlier in the morning, they work longer and harder against greater odds like weather and government, and go to bed later at night, more tired than anybody else. And I quickly learned that was the wrong approach, because I had people come up and say, hey, I get up at 4 in the morning and I drive in 2 hours of traffic, and I get downtown and do my work, and then I get in the traffic at 5 o'clock in the afternoon and fight it getting home. I've got drug problems in my high school, and I've got crime in the streets, and your farmers aren't the only ones that work long and hard. And they close their argument by saying, at least your farmers' kids get to be with their parents and see what they do all day. My kids have no idea what I'm doing all day.
And we all get frustrated, and then we handle it on a number of different levels. And actually, you gave me a perfect lead-in, because many of you know that Chipotle has kind of changed some of their tactics and where they purchase their meat from, and relative to antibiotics. And so you asked me what I did, and when I read what Chipotle was doing, I wrote a letter. But I realized that it's not just...
That did go viral, by the way.
It did go viral, you know, and I've looked back at it, and it's a couple of things. It's saying the right thing at the right time, which I happen to do, but it's also the power of collaboration. And Wanda's out there, and I'm going to give Wanda Patchke credit, because she has built a very strong network of bloggers. And when I gave that letter to Wanda and our staff and said, what do we do with it? Wanda said, I'll put it on my blog. And that thing had power. And you talk about the power of social media. That was powerful. It reached over 60,000 people. I had 585 shares on my Facebook page. I had people I know saying, I have a friend in Illinois that read this, and did you write that? And it was powerful. It got picked up by media, and you know, did it make a difference? I hope so. But I guess the point is, sometimes we have to take action and say something and step out of our little comfort zone.
The perception of the audience and the perception of customers of food, fuel, and fiber changing? Absolutely. Think about their environment. We're short on trust. Think about that. Our environment's changed. So even if we are great, we are going to be questioned. And I will say something that hasn't changed a lot is people like to touch their food. Where I grew up, and maybe where you did, there was a garden. You walked by your food, you touched your food, you nurtured your food, you maybe even named your food if it was in the feedlot. And then you watched it processed in the kitchen and you canned it. I see some gals smiling out here. Maybe the guys helped, but I'm guessing probably not much. We canned that food, we put it in the cellar, we saw it, we walked past it all winter, and we hope it lasted till spring. And we teamed up with the neighbors for corn pack or freezing. We touched our food. Our audience, our customers still want to touch food.
The Center for Food Integrity has done a lot of surveys of consumer attitudes, and they're, in my mind, a reputable firm that does very good work. But when they rank the things that they think is important about agriculture, feeding the world is at the very bottom of the list. Now, granted, it's what people in this room, in this organization, want to hear about, because it can actually make the difference between $4 corn and $8 corn. But if we want to figure out messages that connect with consumers, we need to move beyond that and really emphasize some of these other things. You know, Norman Borlaug, at the time, people probably didn't question food as much. And no question, he was a strong advocate, and I think his authenticity would still ring true today.
Maybe part of our problem is because we are so good at what we do, providing safe, affordable food, we spend so little of our take-home pay on it, as you mentioned, that it is taken for granted.
We may be spending more on video games than food, I'm not sure.
I was just going to add a little bit to what Keith said. Yeah, I think as agricultural organizations and members of those organizations, this is our real opportunity. We have to think about what is the court of public opinion talking about here. And if I am critical of all of us, we've kind of become almost intellectually lazy when we think about the fact that social media and information as a whole on the internet is so easy to get a hold of. When was the last time you read some sort of a peer-reviewed journal about what this is? And as an organization, we've really invested a lot in these abilities to find out what people are thinking about. And at the same time, how do we take full advantage of making sure that you as a farmer or rancher are able to have those conversations, to take advantage of the void, to not just let that happen, but to be willing to stand up and talk about that. And so I just really, we have a huge opportunity for us to be able to do those things. And even when you look at folks like Orion saying he doesn't put anything up without checking 4 sources, that's our opportunity. At the same time, not to clutter the minds of people with just more information, but to think about what affects them, right? To build a little bit on what Keith said, that people aren't as worried about feeding the world. They also don't know or resonate to the word agriculture. They resonate to things like food, right? Fiber and energy, to be able to have those real conversations. Because remember, if you're 3 or 4 generations away from touching or smelling or naming your food, you don't have any clue what agriculture really is. And it's really our opportunity to do that as organizations and as well as professionals in farming and ranching.
The U.S. Farmers and Ranchers Alliance has an excellent website, bestfoodfacts.com. I mean, I've gone there a lot of times just when I needed answers, and they cover it very well in terms that consumers understand, because they're consumer focused. The other thing I've found is that when someone asks me a question and I'm not quite sure where they're coming from or if I understand it, sometimes just to ask them a few questions to kind of understand the situation better helps, because a lot of times they don't know what they're asking either, and they use the wrong term, and then we get something locked in our mind, and we might go down a tangent. But sometimes just taking a step back and asking them a question and clarifying and allowing you to process it makes the situation easier.
Well, Laura, given what you guys went through, did you get anything on social media like consumers connecting the dots that, gee, maybe there won't be any turkeys for Thanksgiving?
You know, it certainly rode waves that you would expect. At first, consumers really just, wanted to know what avian flu was, and what does this mean, and is our food safe, and all of that. And so early on, obviously our focus on messaging was, this is not a food safety issue, this is a bird health issue, and your food is safe. And then as more farms broke and the number of birds that were euthanized came out, and everybody could see the hugeness of what was going on. Definitely, I think there were days I got a question every single day about, are we going to have turkey at Thanksgiving, or what are the prices going to be for eggs? I mean, we're still hearing that, obviously. as a communications person, I'm sure it's no big surprise when I tell you, I really believe in all of the communications activities we do. I am a firm believer in social media and use it every day. I blog in numerous places, and I believe that it is helpful on behalf of my poultry farmers that I do that. So I would just say, if you can, share your story in whatever way is comfortable for you. It doesn't have to be using technology. It doesn't have to be social media. You heard it up here many times. It's those conversations you have with people, whether it's in the grocery store or at church or at meetings or wherever that may be. Those really do count, and they will make a difference. And as Dan said, also, utilize your commodity organizations. We're here to help you all. We do a lot of work on behalf of you to get all of that background information that you need, and we can help you vet things and give you sources, and we work with the national organizations to do that as well. So take advantage of those people at your commodity organization level, because they can be very helpful.
As I kind of wrap them up and think about it, I think that one of the pieces of advice I would say would be to do something. Whatever works for you, having conversations with your neighbor, educating yourself, or stepping out of your comfort zone. Just do something. The other thing I would say, and we really haven't touched upon it, but I would say that we need to stop giving people a reason to have a negative impression about agriculture. The bad apples that are out there, that give us all a black eye, we can't tolerate that. So we need to hold ourselves accountable. And finally, I'd say, relative to Orion's question about are we making a difference? Yeah. I had the opportunity to do an oink outing with a couple of our interns earlier this summer in a West Metro suburb. And those interns got tough questions. This wasn't just how much does a pig weigh, how much do they eat. This was questions from people who didn't eat meat. And I sat and I watched those interns who are younger, and I'm thinking, okay, how is this going to go? And they sat and they talked to those individuals, and they answered their questions, and they related personal experience, and they made a connection. And when those people walked away, one of them said, you changed my opinion. I will feel better about eating meat. So can we make a difference? Yes.
We started talking today about what if we're hungry, we complain differently than if we're well fed and we can make choices. Let's turn the table for a second. What if we don't have a customer? What if we produce something that no longer has an appeal? So we need to be sensitive to that and not have our audience or our customer go away. It's a good idea to train, care, and then share. It's been a great pleasure to be on the panel, and it's wonderful to hear all the comments, some great people, and thanks for the opportunity.
It was a good discussion, and I was honored to be included. We hope that Farm Connections can continue to help tell the story of our rural communities in an educational way. Stay with us. Coming up next, Kent Thiesse talks about volatility following USDA report releases.
Thanks, Dan. Talk to any farm operator and they probably have an opinion on USDA crop reports and the impact those reports have on grain markets. Many times these reports can be big movers in the markets. Sometimes the grain markets have a major downward trend following USDA reports, such as in July and August of 2015. However, at other times, there are market upward movements in the grain markets, such as in the drought year of 2012. These large swings in the grain markets following USDA reports make it very difficult for farm operators to develop a grain marketing plan. One question that often comes up is, how does USDA arrive at these national and state estimates for yields for these monthly crop reports? They actually have a very sophisticated plan. They go out in actual fields and they actually do ear counts and measure ear weights for corn. They actually take an 18 square foot area and count the number of pods and measure the pod weights for soybeans. And actually over the years, especially when you get to the later reports in the months of August and September, the actual yield projections of USDA become quite accurate. USDA then adjusts these numbers based on what actual field conditions are, planting dates, and what weather and crop conditions are at the time of the report. On August 12th this year, USDA projected a national average corn yield of 168.8 bushels per acre, which was slightly below last year's record yield in 2014 of 171 bushels an acre. However, that yield estimate, being the second largest in U.S. history, was actually about 4 bushels higher than most industry experts expected. USDA did follow up in September and lowered it to about 167.4. What happened after that August 12th report was a fairly dynamic change in the grain markets. The corn market instantly, on the first day of trading, dropped 30 cents a bushel on nearly all contracts. Also, the soybean market responded by dropping about 60 cents a bushel. That type of loss for a 2,000-acre farmer, half corn and half soybeans, in one day of grain trading would amount to about $90,000 in lost income potential. Farming is a risky business, as was verified by this past summer when the August 12th USDA crop report was released. There can be very volatile swings in grain market prices, which can affect the farmer's bottom line by tens of thousands of dollars in a day or two. This points out the necessity for farmers to have a sound risk management plan, which includes a solid grain marketing strategy to capture profit margins when they exist. I'm Kent Thiesse, and we'll see you next time.
In 1834, George Stoppel left Germany for a better life. By 1856, he and his wife settled on 160 acres in Olmsted County. Let's learn more about what life was like for farmers in the 1800s.
Olmsted County in the 1850s, was very primitive. Initially, when you arrived here in Olmsted County, Rochester was just being established, so there's a very small town of Rochester. And in the 1850s, it was really being, the attraction was agriculture during this period of time. And so when you arrived here, it's out in the open, and you're coming and arriving with 6 to 8 foot tall prairie grass. And it's pretty much land that you need to establish for yourself, because nobody's gonna do it for you. And you have to become self-sufficient, is really what life is like in the 1850s. My name is Aaron Satterdalen, and I'm the Education and Program Coordinator here at the History Center of Olmsted County. George Stoppel is the youngest of 2 brothers. So George came here with his family, with his wife and his kids, and they came here and bought the 160 acres. And that was, for $1.25 an acre. So they bought it for $200 when they came here. That was a lot of money during the 1850s. He came here on a mission to establish a new life for himself and his family. But of course, at this period of time, Minnesota is a territory. It's not even a state yet. He was able to find quite a bit of success here in Olmsted County when he was able to establish his farm. When they got here and they were able to establish this large barn and the house and the back house that they have, people got wind of that, and they were asking them to help, and they actually became quite well off during this period of time as well. Because of their expertise of being able to establish a farmstead and have it be successful. This barn actually provides a good foundation to understand the farmstead here and to also understand the Stoppels. The barn is a very large barn during, that was built during the 1850s, and it was actually finished about 1874. So the barn was actually done in 3 phases. So the first phase is off to the east, to where they initially had their first home, which is in a dugout cave. And there was 11 people that lived in this dugout cave, and so that's where the family first lived in. And then that next year, the family started building this large barn. And so the barn as it stands sits as 50 by 100. So it's a very large barn for this time period. And this is where they initially brought all of their animals and all their livestock. You have to remember, during the 1850s, this is a horse farm. There's no such thing as tractors at this period of time. The homestead, you had to homestead the land within 5 years, so they really had a lot of work to do within a very short period of time in order to make a living off the farm. They would have first started with oats and beans, and a way to basically have hay here on the farm. I mean, they have a lot of animals, so they have horses and they have cows and pigs and goats and livestock. And I do know that they had milk here on the farm because they had some dairy cows. And they also had a very small vineyard here on the farm. And that would be an important thing to have your root cellars for, is to keep your wine cold. And so when you butchered your livestock, you'd smoke it and then be able to put it in the root cellar for cold storage and be able to keep it long term. Typically during this era of time, the kids are not just sitting around doing nothing. For example, some of the maybe younger kids would have gone and gotten eggs from the chicken coop. But the older son was helping dad out in the field. So the farm it evolved when it got established. What makes this farm unique during this period of time is George has some ingenuity. And I say that because the farmstead, or particularly the barn, is set up to be able to drive in one end and out the other. So he was able to teach this way of farming to his kids. They were trying to basically make a better life here in the United States. And the farm was in the Stoppel family for 100 years.
Exploring career opportunities in agriculture. Ag 101. Funding for Ag 101 provided by the Ag Star Fund for Rural America.
Hello, we're joined here with Cole Regnier from Canby FFA chapter. Welcome to the State FFA Convention.
Hi.
Nice to have you here. So Cole, let's learn about your decision to major in ag and find out what your career choice that you've decided to go into and where you're going to pursue that at.
I'd like to start my education at Lake Area Tech for precision machining, which is basically the start of me trying to kind of get back to my hometown for the fact that you can do precision machining and also have a farm on the side. So kind of the day job for that side of effect. And then I already own a small cow-calf herd. So that's kind of my deal, is I want to get back to where I can still be self-employed, but yet have other job other than just in beef production or crop production. So then I can also, everything kind of works together, so I can fix all my tools and yet use them too.
Oh, that's exciting. So let's break that opportunity down in precision machining. Can you describe what does that mean and what kind of courses have you taken or will be taking?
I will be taking a CNC machine class, and then also basically you're sitting on lathes and stuff that are, in the first year we're learning all hand tools and stuff, and then the second year it's all computer, numerically controlled technology. And to get myself ready for that, I've already taken our technologies. I've already done coding and stuff like that through our school. So
what's exciting about this is the technological advances that have been made in agricultural farming equipment is phenomenal, and really exciting to know that your major is going to be in the forefront of those changes and helping the next generation of tractors and equipment. So what excites you the most about that?
I'd have to say the most fun part about it is being able to go out and use something that you build. Being able to build something that'll help you and others make a task easier, or actually able to do a task that wouldn't be accomplishable before.
So thank you so much for coming in and taking the time.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining me on another episode of Farm Connections. From honoring the treasured past of settlers to communicating the future of agriculture, Farm Connections is proud to tell the rural story. I'm your host, Dan Hoffman.